Did you know that Holosmith is a new elite spec in this new expansion we like to call Path of Firing?
Ooh, what weapon do I get as a Holosmith?
You get a laser sword, also known...
Is this essentially the start of season 2?
This
basically
is this start. I guess it's season 3.
A whole new wave of elite specs, and you've gone with NG first.
Okay.
I would just like to say, Holosmith, I think, has got some cool build craft opportunities.
Yes.
And what I want to see that you've done, here's what I'm hoping for, is dodgy stuff. I want to see thermal. I want to see vent exhaust.
Vent exhaust. Okay, well, you know what? I think you might be in luck.
Yeah, baby. All right, cool. This is good. Okay.
All right, so I didn't go full dodgy stuff. I did sort of like a... Okay, what I did was kind of a hybrid between dodgy stuff and other stuff. And I kind of made it so that everything in this build sort of serves a dual purpose.
Now, I've noticed we're out here in just one of the Path of Fire maps. Are you suggesting then to the audience that this is something fun to play through an open world while that's all new and shiny and fun?
I would say so, because that is what I did with this build, and it was a lot of fun.
And I think that right as an expansion releases, that's the coolest time to talk about open world, quality of life. Doesn't need to be like insanely like min-maxed, but just fun builds.
Exactly.
I think that this is the best time to talk about builds like this.
Shall we go somewhere we could have a little more privacy?
Okay, all right. I'm not quite sure about the way you phrased that, but
well, I guess we should do the gear first, because why not?
Okay.
So I have gone full berserker. Runes are gonna be runes of the Citadel.
Oh, I'll tell you what, dude. I collected a ton of different runes on my new character to swap on legendary armor for free, just for fun. And Citadel was one of the ones that I used and had most fun with.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Citadel runes. If people don't understand, Citadel is referring to the Black Citadel, and it drops bombs.
That's correct.
That's the idea.
That's correct. And it's kind of flavorful for an engineer as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So the reason why I took Reigns of the Citadel is because there is no other way in my build to get Fury. So I kind of rely on this to give me the extra 20% crit chance that I like to run with in this build.
Oh, okay.
And then for my sigils, I've gone with Sigil of Strength, just 60% chance on critical gain might for 10 seconds, so you'll probably have around 10 stacks of might, maybe a little less from the sigil. And finally, Sigil of Accuracy for more crit percent.
Wait, what? 10 stacks of might from a single sigil?
Yeah, it's 10 seconds of might on a 1 second cooldown.
All I ever accomplished was failure.
What sigil is this?
Sigil of Strength.
Oh, I didn't realize that was that strong.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And that's without any wound duration. But obviously, you're not going to hit it right on the cooldown each time, so you'll have a little bit less than that. So with Holosmith, you unlock this awesome little thing up here, which is Engage Photon Forge. It is essentially on a 6-second cooldown, I guess, kind of. Yeah, 6-second cooldown. You could disable it and then re-enable it after a small 1-second internal cooldown, and then it's on a 6-second cooldown again to disable it again. It's got very strong skills. There are traits here that boost your hollow form, but let's start with the minor trait first. I went with Prismatic Converter.
So deactivate Photon Forge converts conditions into boons based on your heat level.
So not bad. Sometimes you might have conditions for going around, who cares? It's not that big of a deal, but just in case you ever have a condition that's really annoying you, you can deactivate Photon Forge
and again, if you tunnel in on, if we're really going, this is open world and stuff, traits like that are nice. Like, you might sneer at that it's not much Condi Cleanse, but it's enough to get rid of Cripple so that you can break combat quicker, so you can get back on your mount. Or poison or whatever, right? And for that, it's very valuable.
Yeah, and this build doesn't have that much more Condi Cleanse, so it's pretty invaluable. Your major trait, I'm currently doing Crystal Configuration Storm.
Photon Forge skill 1 now fires explosive projectiles. I remember using this back in the demo. This thing was really fun.
Yeah. So
they actually had to specifically nerf it based off of feedback, right?
Yeah, it's good. So it gives your hollow auto attack skills a lot more range. So it's basically like you shoot laser bolts at people, and you don't have to be right next to everything when you fight them in this case, and it's good. It's good. You do about the same damage as you do just when you're right next to them, and it just does more damage. It just makes it...
Again, I like this. I think that little quality of life things like this are...
yeah. So if you don't care about this, because you will be in melee range more often than not, melee range, so instead of that, you could use Crystal Configuration Eclipse, which gives you quite a bit of barrier if you're fighting a lot of things, which you're likely to do in open world scenarios. And it gives you stability as well, which is always useful, because they do...
Yeah, the stab here is really nice in Path of Fire.
Okay, and then finally we got, in the Grandmaster slot, I'm using Thermal Release Valve Vent Exhaust, which means when I dodge roll, I lose 15% of the heat that I built up, which is great because it really lets me balance the heat here and let me keep it where I want without having to disengage your Photon Forge in case of heat exposure. You know, like when you get to 100% heat, what happens is you overheat and you deal a lot of damage to yourself, and your Photon Forge is deactivated for a longer period of time. So with that 15% heat loss though, another thing is you get heat therapy off of that, which heals you for about 900 health whenever you dodge roll, which is nice. So, what are the other trait lines, you might ask?
I'm hoping to see the use of a new Grandmaster here.
That's correct.
Which I'm a big fan of.
That's correct. So usually when you dodge, you get Explosive Powder Keg, get a little 800 damage explosion when you dodge, and it takes a second to detonate those, so it's, you know, it's interesting. But now now with the new trait, we got Mind Trail, Minesweeper. Evasive Powder Keg now turns into a series of mines. They're slightly less damage each, but together they all do a lot more damage. And what's interesting about it is that you could also detonate it yourself independently. So you could only have 3 mines at a time. So if you dodge roll,
when you double dodge,
yeah,
it blows up the old ones.
Exactly. So when you double dodge, it blows up the old ones. Also, when people walk over them, they blow up because they're mines. They actually do a lot of damage. Like when you're pumping out your 25 might, which you will likely do with this build, they probably do around 2,500 damage each on crits, 3,000 damage each on crits. Pretty good.
Again, not to sound like a broken record as well, but the place Minesweeper is most fun in the game is like random open world places where you can be guaranteed that the enemy AI will walk in a straight line directly over all 3 of them.
Yeah, so that's also why I'm currently doing the Crystal Configuration Storm. Because in certain cases, when the mobs are just being mindless, whatever, and you're a little more scared about getting hit by things,
you can range them as they walk.
You can range them as they walk towards you, walking over your mines. It's fun. Also, I've got Big Boomer for more vitality and ferocity based on my power. You could use Aim Assisted Rocket for a little more damage, but I think this is better overall, Big Boomer, on the major trait. And then also I got Blasting Zone for more power, and you get Might whenever you blast a finisher, basically. Finally, the thing that ties it all together is tools. Holosmith has a few interesting new utility skills, but there's one that just sort of shines over all the others for me, and that is Photon Wall.
Photon Wall, interesting, okay.
So Photon Wall is a defensive barrier that appears in front of you. It blocks missiles for 3 seconds. It's pretty good, and you can do stuff at the same time as the Photon Wall's up.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're over heat threshold, it reflects missiles instead. And also you can shoot it out to do a lot of damage. And I think if it's over 50% health, you do 3 walls of 1,000 damage each. It's very strong. But the most important thing about it is its tool belt skill.
Oh, right, okay. Particle Accelerator.
7-second cooldown, 0 activation time, very similar to the surprise shot from the rifle turret. 7-second cooldown, 0.
It's literally just a power creeped version of it. It's exactly the same, except it's better when you're overheating. It's exactly the same.
Oh wait, it's slightly lower base damage, but you get some swiftness, and it's just good. It's like a companion to the surprise shot. It's very similar to it.
Yeah.
But what this means is you are open to making a very strong new static discharge build.
Your enemy
Oh, I
sees
see
the
what you're going
altar.
with. You're going with kinetic battery, yeah.
Yeah, so static discharge, whenever you use a tool belt skill, you launch out a 600 damage, basically the same amount of damage as your Mind Trail mines. So it could go up to like 2500 damage. That bounces multiple times, but what's interesting about it is it's all based on your tool belt skills. So the shorter cooldown your tool belt skills are, the more damage you get out of your static discharge, and the shorter cast time, the better it is as well, because you can do nice solid bursts with it. So that, combined with your Grandmaster kinetic battery, is very strong, because kinetic battery basically says when you're in combat, every time you use a tool belt skill, you get a stack of kinetic charge. If you reach 5 stacks, you get 5 seconds of super speed and 5 seconds of quickness. That gets boosted, obviously, based on your boon duration. So just with this kinetic battery and these low cooldown tool belt skills, and don't forget that your Engage Photon Forge Hollow Form is a tool belt skill. So when you engage and when you disengage, not only are you getting a static discharge for each time, but you're getting a charge of kinetic battery for each time.
Yeah, and you're also getting a faster cooldown on it.
And
There's just so many tools is beautiful with Holosmith.
exactly,
It really
exactly. So faster cooldown. So just with kinetic battery and 0 quickness duration, if you're using all of your tool belt skills off cooldown, you're nearing 100% quickness uptime, but you're getting more like 80-90%, but just that is already almost 100% quickness uptime. So that's very strong. And finally, I have long takedown round as my master, which is pretty good. It's just an extra little bucket of damage.
Okay.
And the miners are strong in tools. You got tool belt skills, gain reduced recharge, additional damage when your endurance is not full, which is great because you're doing that a lot. You're dodging all the time.
Yep.
And tool belt skills grant vigor, so you have more dodges available to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and your vigor uptime's actually really high as well because you're constantly spamming.
Yeah, it's basically 100% vigor uptime.
I really like kinetic bat. I mean, I haven't played this build in POF yet, but I really liked playing this build, even just on my own with the lobby. But what's cool about, what's kind of weird about POF is there's not much quickness going around. Even though Firebrand's around, I've found in big Zergs in the open world, there's not much quickness going around. So being able to have all this quickness on your own and not sort of have to worry about that, I think would be really, really fun. And especially for like when you're doing story and just when you're completely on your own. Quickness is such a huge difference, you know? Yeah,
exactly. But then also you get quickness from your sword 3 skill, Radiant Arc. You get 4 seconds above 50% heat, and that cooldown, that 14-second cooldown for that skill, gets reduced a lot if you're using the auto attack for sword. I'm doing sword shield because this build is
hell yeah. Your sword shield's the best. Shield is so fun on NG. I love shield on NG.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of dual purposes for all this. Basically, all my skills have dual purposes. Magnetic shield is reflect projectiles, and it could also be blasted out for a combo finisher blast and a knockback. The static shield, same thing, basically dazes and stuns and blocks. The photon wall, same thing, it blocks but also could be shot out, and all of the tool belt skills is the dual purpose of everything else. Your rifle turret could be put down if you want to do a little extra damage, and obviously the tool belt skill does more damage as well, but on top of that, paired with the heal skill, healing turret, it could be used to blast out an extra heal. But that brings us to the elite skill and the last utility skill. I've been using Prime Light Beam because it's a lot of fun.
Okay, Prime Light Beam.
Prime Light Beam,
this sounds fun. This is the perfect kind of elite to me. I like big, nasty striking elites.
It's so cool. It's unblockable. It's, you get...
a launch.
It's a launch. It's a huge chunk of damage. It's a little bit slow to line up, but, you know, you have quickness, right? So it's not that slow. And yeah, it just does a lot of damage.
The other thing is, like, one of the coolest things about the mortar kit is Orbital Strike, and one of the cooler things about the supply crate is the crazy Condi cleanse on the med pack drop. But you don't even get those as a Holosmith.
Exactly. So there's no point for them, really.
So yeah, unless you like the idea of becoming a tornado, woo, or using a Mistfire Wolf, I think, yeah, probably Prime Light Beam.
It's the way to go. And The utility skill is where we come into question, though. Right now, I'm using Rocket Boots because my name is Rocket Boots, and also and also because the tool belt skill has a short cooldown. Sort of, it's a 13-second cooldown with the tools trait line. It does a good amount of damage, 1,000 damage base plus a good amount of burning. And so it's an overall solid tool belt skill. And Rocket Boots, as a gadget itself, it got kind of buffed now that it has the 2 stacks of charges. And it's a blast too, so it works well with your healing turret. It's a almost instant blast for that. And it's good to get around the battlefield faster, good to avoid things easily. It's all around good, Rocket Boots. Now, but there's a lot of options, actually. Another thing you could do, if you don't necessarily want to use Runes of the Citadel with this Berserker setup, you could go Utility Goggles. Get Fury and Immunity to Blindness from that. Another option is Tool Kit, because the cooldown is 14 seconds for the Throw Wrench. It's 2 hits of 1,000 damage, which is good. And it's not too slow of an activation as well. It does a little more damage than the other ones. And then obviously you have Toolkit itself, which gives you more options for blocking. You have the Gear Shield. You could do a lot of damage with your Pry Bar. And if you need extra CC, you got Magnet. Also, you got Personal Battering Ram. The utility skill itself does a good amount of damage, and it is good for taking down the bars, CC bars. But the Launch Personal Battering Ram has the lowest cooldown besides the other ones, Tool Belt skill with 10.5 seconds, and it does the most amount of damage with 1,400 without multiple hits.
Yeah, and it's good range. I love Personal Battering Ram. It's one of my favorite skills to run around an open world with.
Exactly.
I love that skill.
It's good range. It matches the range of the other things, so you could do a lot more ranged takedowns with that. The last thing I've been trying to use, which I think does the most damage overall, is Throw Mine as a utility skill. The problem with it is the Tool Belt skill is 1 second cast, so you really only want to use it when you already have that quickness.
Yeah, it's slow, clunky.
It's clunky, but it does a ridiculous amount of damage. It's 700 each mine. You put 5 mines down. They remove a boon each, but that doesn't really matter in open world. But it's 5 times 700 damage. It is the most damage out of all the utility skills I just mentioned. And the other interesting thing of it is placing it, and then placing it gives you a what's it called? A static discharge, and then detonating it gives you another static discharge. So that's 2 static discharge from that. So technically, even though it's a 14-second cooldown, it gives you static discharges as though it was a 7-second cooldown.
Yeah.
And
the other stuff too, like extra vigor and stuff.
Extra vigor as well, but the only problem is that it doesn't count as a. For some reason, it counts as a 2-belt skill. The detonate counts as a 2-belt skill for static discharge, but it doesn't count as a 2-belt skill for the vigor or for the kinetic battery.
Oh, really? That's weird.
I know, it's really weird. I guess that's everything. So I tried running this in PvP a little bit, a similar build to this. It does exactly what it does in PvE. The only problem is currently in PvP there is some really ridiculous things going on, like Scourge is kind of crazy, and there's a few other ridiculous builds out there that this build has a little bit of trouble dealing with.
I have to be honest. even before Scourge and stuff, this has got nowhere near the quality of life it needs, really.
Yeah.
Not to be genuinely competitive. To prey on newbies, fine.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's
a nice burst build. It's a nice. It's a lot of fun to try to use. You got a lot of blocks. You get a lot of multi-use things, but not nearly enough Condi cleanse for PvP.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wouldn't recommend using this in PvP.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah. So I guess now's the time.
I would say that this is basically one of the more fun iterations of Holosmith that I would be playing if I was doing this in open world. So for that, I would give it quite a lot of credit. There's some quite slight trait changes I would make. for example, you went Big Boomer. Now, I've not played, so I don't know how much you really benefit from the vitality on that is what I care about more than anything. But aim-assisted rocket is and always has been amazing for open world. And it helps you spike down mobs so comfortably. The aim-assisted rocket is so fun. And if I was running this, there's no way I wouldn't be running that.
Okay,
I also don't care too much about blasting zone. And I don't really think any of the blasting synergy is really that important. Not the glass cannon's that amazing either, but I would at least be, I mean, in open world you do a lot of flipping anyway, but I've always liked the idea of running Grenadier in open world.
Really?
Just because of the mounts and all the falling you constantly do.
But
does
Grenadier help mount falling damage?
Yeah, you drop grenades. No, not the falling. Well, I don't know about the falling damage part of it. But it drops a grenade field, which, for flavor reasons, I'd want to play with, and I want to have some funsies with. I mean, I've just remembered as well. You get a mastery that halves all the full damage, so how frequently you actually proc it,
I don't think
know.
that's really that important.
But anyway, yeah, like I say, it's just a minor thing. I mean, it's weird when we talk in the capacity of open world stuff because there is so much swapping. Like earlier, we talked about utility goggles, the trait for that. That would be something I'd swap on and off if I saw that there were going to be a lot of sand lions or whatever coming up.
Where'd you go anyway?
The other thing I mentioned was rocket turret. I really like rocket turret. I think it's really good for CC bars. It's fun to play around with, to actually place, and the F ability you get with it is super nice. It doesn't have too much synergy with the kinetic battery, honestly. Which is what I'd like the most. I like what you said earlier about running the Firebrand runes. I'm not sure that the Citadel runes really...
Well, I mean, it gives you that fury, that you're missing. So if you're going to be running your what's it called, utility goggles instead, then and you don't need the other one, you might as well go Firebrand runes.
And again, I can for builds like this, I can never understate Assassin's gear all the way.
I would agree. Really like that would reduce the need for fury at all, I'd say. So. Yeah, that's probably a great idea.
What I mean, because I've not theory crafted it properly, but whatever gets you consistently solo as close as possible to that 100% number for as much uptime as possible. Like, it's just really, really nice. It's really consistent and fun in the open world. I also, though, I feel like maybe I've had my fill of static discharge, and I feel like it's not as strong as I used to feel like it was.
You're just jaded. Your static discharge jaded.
Well, static discharge used to be really fun.
Yeah, what's wrong with it now?
It's not as good as it used to be. I mean, it'll be good in this build. It'll be good in this build. But what's fun to me about this build is the kinetic battery synergy. Because kinetic battery's always been a bit of a joke. And then all of a sudden it has because that's the beautiful pairing. The kinetic battery beautifully pairs with the Holosmith. The static discharge does too, to a lesser extent. But yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say, to be honest, on this one. I mean, you already explained everything else. You already talked about all of its weaknesses and stuff.
Yeah.
Not sure where else to take it to.
I think that's it. I think we're good. Let's kill these people.
Alright, let's go. Oh. See, immediately I want to stab. Corona burst.
Why did you get knocked?
Sand shark launched me in this.
You're supposed to dodge, buddy.
I'm in open world. I don't like builds where I have to dodge in open world.
That's how you get half your damage.
This guy's so meaty. People were whinging about the nerf, but I love how hard this guy hits.
Yeah, it's good. So good. Okay, so glad that we were able to try that together. So thanks so much, man.
What a bonding exercise that was.
Oh, it was so nice. We took that. We got a little chest at the end of that. That was great. And you got to try out the build. So thank you so much for joining me. So yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it's kind of like less of a Boots Bad build and more of a I'm playing Path of Fire and enjoying playing with this build. I wanted to share it with you. So,
yeah, this is a great power Holosmith, basically.
Yeah. So I think instead, you're right. I think for the next Boot Bad build, I'm going to go ham. I'm going to go ham with something.
Ooh,
and
okay.
It's going to be kind of stupid.
I'm curious. It's good. It's exciting. A whole new season.
Okay, all right. So that's it. I'll see you guys later. I got to stop playing. It's too hard to stop playing Path of Fire. Bye.